The silence of the mountain is suffocating, a heavy, ringing stillness that seems to amplify the rhythmic thud scrape of a wooden staff against the ancient stone. Moses leans heavily on that staff, his breath hitching in a chest that has grown tight with the weight of 80 years. Every time the wind howls through the jagged granite crags of Horeb, he hears the echoing screams of the Egyptian taskmaster he murdered 40 years ago. He still feels the spray of hot sand as he frantically buries the body, and he still hears the mocking, sharp-tongued sneer of his Hebrew brother. Now, Moses has accepted the aftermath, resigning himself to the idea that his legacy will be nothing more than tending another man's sheep. But then, the atmosphere shifts, the oxygen seems to thin, and a scent of ozone, the smell of a coming storm, fills the air. A flash of light strikes a crevice in the rock, and Moses sees the impossible. A common thorn bush is roaring with a fierce, incandescent fire, yet the leaves remain a vibrant, defiant green. In this moment, the trauma of his past and the heavy silence of his present are about to be consumed by a voice that has been watching him in the dark for 4 decades, proving that even a life reduced to embers can be reignited by a single spark of divine purpose. Before we begin, a brief note. While the research and heart of this script are human-guided, the visual imagery you see today was crafted using advanced AI to recreate the ancient world with stunning detail. Welcome to the Faith and Facts channel, where we bring the ancient world to life and explore the intersection of sacred scripture and documented history. The Prince, the Fugitive, and the Flame. Moses had spent 40 years convincing himself that he was a finished chapter, a man whose calling had died the moment he fled across the border of Egypt. To understand why he hesitated at the bush, we have to look at the psychological toll of the middle years. For 4 decades, he lived as a stranger in a strange land, the literal meaning of the name he gave his son Gershom. He was caught between 2 worlds, no longer an Egyptian aristocrat, but never truly a Midianite nomad. He had settled for enough, a wife, a flock, and a quiet, anonymous life under the shadow of his father-in-law, Jethro. When the bush erupted into flame, it wasn't just a spectacle. It was a divine interruption of the mundane. God didn't summon Moses to a temple or a palace. He met him at his day job. As the fire burned without consuming the wood, Moses realized that he was no longer the one in control of the conversation. When the voice called out Moses, Moses, it was the first time in 40 years that anyone had spoken his name with the authority, someone who knew exactly who he was before he became a fugitive. The resistance Moses offered wasn't born of true humility, but of a deep-seated, paralyzing fear that if he stepped back into the light of his purpose, the darkness of his past would catch up to him. He argued with the creator of the universe, because he was terrified that he was still the same impulsive man who had failed 40 years prior. He saw his stutter, his age, and his criminal record. God saw a leader who had finally been emptied of his own ego so that he could be filled with something eternal. The stakes were staggering. While Moses was arguing about his lack of eloquence on a quiet mountain, an entire nation was being crushed under the weight of genocide and state-sponsored slavery. The resolution of this inner conflict came when God shifted the focus away from Moses' resume and onto God's identity. When Moses asked, "Who am I?" God didn't give him a motivational speech. He simply gave him a promise. "I will be with you." The shepherd's staff, the tool of his humble, hidden life, was thrown to the dirt and transformed, symbolizing that when we surrender our meager tools to the divine, they become the very things that can topple empires. Application: living in the light of the bush. The encounter at the burning bush is not a dusty relic of the past. It is a mirror reflecting our own modern struggles with identity, failure, and the terrifying call to step into the unknown. 1. Your wilderness is your training ground. We often look at the quiet years of our lives, the seasons where we feel stuck in a dead-end job, a long illness, or a period of waiting, as wasted time. Moses likely viewed his 40 years in Midian as a massive detour. However, Those years were actually his most vital training. He learned the terrain of the desert. He found the hidden water sources, and he mastered the survival skills he would eventually need to lead 2 million people through that very same landscape. If you feel like you are in a hidden season, don't despise the silence. God doesn't waste experiences. The patience you are learning now, the humbleness of your current task, and the resilience you are building in your Midian are the very tools you will need for your exodus. Your wilderness is not a punishment. It is your preparation. 2. The power of what is in your hand. When Moses complained that he had no resources to lead a revolution, God asked a simple, piercing question: what is in your hand? It was just a weathered piece of wood, a common shepherd's staff used for warding off predators. We have a tendency to wait for a better version of ourselves, more money, more education, or more social status, before we feel qualified to make a difference. But the miracle at the bush began with what Moses already possessed. What do you have in your hand right now? Is it a specific skill, a small amount of savings, a platform, or simply a willing heart? Stop waiting for the ideal resources and offer the ordinary ones you already hold. When the I am touches the ordinary, it becomes extraordinary. 3. Overcoming the who am I complex. Moses' first response to God's call was an identity crisis. Who am I that I should go? We do this every day. We look at our past mistakes, our lack of degrees, or our social anxieties and decide we are the wrong person for the job. Notice that God never actually answered Moses' question about his own identity. Instead, he answered with his identity: I will be with you. Your calling is not about your capacity. It is about your connection to the one who called you. If you are waiting to feel qualified before you step out in faith, you will stay tending sheep for the rest of your life. Success in your purpose isn't found in your who am I, but in his I am. For the necessity of taking off the shoes, the first command God gave was for Moses to take off his sandals because the ground was holy. In the ancient world, removing shoes was a sign of total vulnerability and surrender. You couldn't run as fast or protect your feet from the thorns. To experience a breakthrough, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to take off the protective layers you've built around your heart. The pretenses, the ego, and the masks you wear to look successful. God cannot use the person you are pretending to be. He can only use the person you actually are when you stand barefoot and honest before him. 5. Hearing the groaning beyond your mountain. Moses was content on his mountain until God reminded him of the suffering of others. It is easy to get so comfortable in our own quiet life that we become deaf to the injustice and pain in the world around us. Your purpose is rarely just about you. God interrupts our comfort because there are people in Egypt, in our neighborhoods, our families, and our cities, who are groaning under the weight of despair. When God calls you, he is often answering someone else's prayer. Are you willing to let your comfort be interrupted to become someone else's answer? Moses went up Mount Horeb as a man running from his past, and he came down as a man running toward a future that would change the world forever. The fire that refused to consume the bush was the same fire that began to burn in his soul. A fire that would eventually lead a nation through the depths of the Red Sea. Your current struggle, your dark night of the soul, or your dead-end job might just be the stage for your greatest calling. If this story reminded you that it's never too late to start again, and that your ordinary life is full of holy ground, please like this video and subscribe to the Faith and Facts channel. We believe these ancient narratives hold the keys to overcoming our modern lion's dens. Moses tried to give God 5 reasons why he wasn't the right choice. Have you ever felt like your past or your insecurities disqualified you from a big dream? What is one excuse you are ready to leave behind on the mountain today? Let's encourage each other in the comments below.